I'm now ready to start winding my first section of 12 ends each of these 4 colors on my spool rack. You can just barely see when I wiggle the end around that each color is going up through the eye, the little eye here on the spool rack. And I have finally successfully tied a slip knot that I will put on the starting peg of my warping board. So I've just put the bundle of yarn on my starting peg, and the tricks I've found to this are: first, don't pull too much thread up from the spool rack because it will get tangled. And the second is the most important lesson. In fact, I fumbled around with this for a little bit. What happens with my right hand? So I'm going to continue guiding the yarn around the warping bag board with my right hand, but my left hand is going to become a color separator. So I am, and this is difficult to do with my left hand. Uh, you might say, Deb, this is silly. Why didn't you plan things differently so that you could use your more dexterous right hand to separate the colors? And I might actually try that the next time around. But what I've done is each of these colors is now separated by the 4 fingers of my left hand. And as they come up off the spool rack, my left hand is keeping them from tangling, and my right hand is going to continue guiding this bundle around the warping board. And that's really all there is to it. The trick, the trick I found in my first couple attempts, because yes, I did rehearse before I put this video up online. The trick is, like I said, don't pull up too much thread from the spool rack at one go. And if it feels like something is starting to tangle, just stop and catch it. So my left hand, the closer I keep it to the spool rack, the happier I turn out to be. So I am warping, warping, warping. And I want you to notice that this time, though I am pushing back as I go on the threads above the cross, I'm actually leaving the cross ends fairly separate, because with 4 colors going on at a time, it is a little too difficult to separate them out once they have been pushed together. So with keeping them separate, I'm going to be able, I hope, to count to 6 and not have any mistakes when I finish this repeat. Okay, and I want you to notice that this is now looking fairly smooth because this is already my 4th attempt. It took me a little while to get this down, but I feel like this is already a lot smoother than it was even on my previous attempt. And by the time I get done winding 364 ends, I am going to be a pro, man. I can turn pro, finally. Uh, the big thing is, no matter what else I do, to not let the 4 ends in my left hand go. What I do with my right hand is fine, and maybe that's why I chose to use my left hand as the color separator and my right hand as the guider here, because now I can still pick up the phone if I need to, or grab my can of Diet Coke, or whatever it is I need to do. But I can't do that if my right hand is tangled up in yarn. So slowly going through, slowly. Thank goodness there's only 6 threads in this section. And then I'm going to use my counting thread again. Now, counting thread is a bit of a misnomer in this situation. Normally, you use a counting thread to, you guessed it, count. But I'm going to do here is actually use it to remind myself where I'm at in my warp color sequence. Because this is a complex warp color sequence, as we saw, and there's a lot going on. So when I finish this section of 12 warp ends, that is actually where I'm going to stop and mark where I'm at. Because if I don't do that, I promise you I will lose track. Okay, and see, I push these um, colors too close together, these passes around the warping board too close together, close to the cross, and trying to separate them back out so that I can see, oh yeah, I've got 4, so I just need 2 more. Trying to separate them back out is a lot harder than keeping them separate at the beginning. So again, as I go through, I want to push back on the groups of warp ends at the top so that I've got space on my pegs. But I don't want to do that the closer I get to the bottom. Especially now that I'm almost done with this section and I don't want to have to start over again because that's just awkward and it wastes yarn. The other point I want to make about this left hand and what it's doing is whether I'm using 1 color at a time or 4 colors at a time or whatever crazy thing I'm doing, what this left hand is doing is a slight, very slight bit of tensioning. And that is all to the good. Because, as I mentioned earlier, the point is not to use as little yarn as possible. The point is to end up with a warp chain where the colors, where each yarn is at more or less the same tension. And you can see that I've got a drooper here because this is an end I tied off when I did my first section of 20 cherry. That's okay. Too long is better than too short because remember, you can never weave longer than your shortest warp end. But this combination of slight tension and keeping the colors separate is what's saving the day here. And I just noticed that I made an oopsie on my last pass around, so it's all good. So now, and I can do this at the cross, but it's actually a little easier for me to see on this end peg. I look and I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is the number I want for this 4 color section. So now I can push everything back down here, which is good because I'm kind of running out of room. And then I will, at the top, oh, see, this is why it's so important to pay attention. And it's why now I have a lot more sympathy for my fitness instructor's videos where she flubs because it's really hard to talk and do this stuff at the same time. Okay, so what I'm going to do at my starting peg is I'm just going to wrap, for the moment, all 4 colors around. I'm going to push everybody back. I'm going to check and make sure that there's no mistakes. And yeah, that droopy is going to make me crazy for the rest of this project, but that's okay. And now I'm taking my counting thread and the color and just crossing it again over this section. And then I'm just scooching it out of the way. So now let's see what happens when, oh, and I'm ticking off on my pattern which section I just completed. So now I'm going to move to a 3 color section of the warp, and this time it's burgundy, cherry, and turmeric, which is the orange color in my colorway. And that means I'm going to unwrap from around here. I'm going to separate out the gold, and I'm going to wind it up on a spare peg way up at the top, out of my way. And now, she said, hopefully, I can proceed with winding the next section of 12 warp ends with 3 colors. And let's see how this goes. And so far, it's going just as well as the last section did. Again, I'm mushing everybody back as I go, and always keeping the three colors between my fingers and just doing it, just going around the warping board, stopping to make my pausing to make my cross, keeping my left hand not at too far away, as close as I can manage, let's say, to the spool rack. And notice as I go, this gold thread, it's just hanging out here, waiting to be called into service the next time the warp color order pattern calls for it. And I'm just going to keep doing this down my pattern, down my warp color sequence until I have done half the chain. And then I will stop and finish up this chain by securing everything. And I will start a new chain. And in fact, because this is symmetrical, I can probably get away with doing the exact same thing, starting with 20 cherry ends and then pulling in my colors and making it all pretty.